Hi everybody, thank you so much for being here. My name is Laura and I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about stretching. Now I have a lot of people who come to me for Pilates or with injuries and they say, oh, I think the problem is I don't stretch enough, or oh, I just need to stretch more. And while it might be true, sometimes it is necessary to stretch more, oftentimes that is not necessarily the solution. And it is important to get to the root cause of an issue in order to address it. And often that addressing isn't done, or the solution isn't done by stretching. So I'm going to run you through a few examples. And this is especially relevant if you have found that you have pain or injury and that you stretch regularly, but it's not getting better. So if you are always stretching your hamstrings, but they're always tight, or you are always rolling your glutes and they're always tight, you're always stretching your upper body and it's always tight. So these are some examples of times when perhaps there might be another issue at play that isn't fixed by stretching. So the first thing, as an example, is when we have muscles that are tight and short. So we usually stretch because we say, oh, my muscle feels really tight, so I'm going to stretch it out. And initially, it will probably indeed lengthen it and make it feel better and stretch it out. But if the cause of it being tight is that it is actually shortened, then lengthening it out is not going to give it a fix. It's just going to kind of lengthen the elastic out, and then the elastic will spring back. So a good example of this is hip flexors. So if you spend a lot of time sitting, then your hip flexors, because they are flexed, then they shorten over time. And then they get tight because they are short. And so when you stretch them out and you stand up and you stretch them, or you do a hip flexor stretch, that kind of thing, then yes, it lengthens them. But it doesn't then address the issue, because then you go back and sit down and they go back to that shortened position. They like to be in that shortened position now. That's where they've gotten used to being. That's where they want to be. So they're going to keep returning back to that shortened position. So the solution then is to strengthen them, and in particular strengthen the opposing muscles, so that they can lengthen out permanently and not want to go back to that shortened position. In today's video, I'm just talking about some reasons why stretching might not be helpful. I'm not going to go into necessarily all the different solutions, but just some examples for you to kind of explore in your own body and your own life of when stretching might be something that you can put to the side and look for another solution. So another example of this is in compensation. So sometimes when we have muscles that are not doing the job that they are supposed to, then we have other muscles that compensate. And when these muscles compensate, essentially they're working more than they're supposed to, and another muscle is not doing its share and working as much as it is supposed to. So the compensating muscle will get a little bit cranky. And that crankiness can come across as tightness, and it can feel really kind of almost jammed up. If you've ever had that feeling, like, in your hips or your back, it feels really tight, really jammed up. And that is often because there's a muscle that is compensating because another one isn't doing its job. So a really good example of this is in your hamstrings and or your lower back. So whenever we walk, our glutes and hamstrings are supposed to both work to help move your leg backwards. That's called hip extension. And these muscles connect in by the pelvis, by the pelvic floor, with the core. And then, of course, the pelvis and core, that connects in with the spine. So if you are having regular issues in your lower back, or you regularly have tight hamstrings, and it doesn't seem to matter how much you stretch them, they're always tight, then it might be an issue of glutes that are not strong and doing their job, or a deep core muscles that are not strong and doing their job, such as pelvic floor, transverse abdominis, those are the ones that go around the middle, wrap you up, the multifidus down in your spine. There's lots of potential options of what could be weak and not really doing its job, but the hamstring, for example, is one that will get tight and compensate. Another example of when this happens, when stretching isn't necessarily the solution, is when you have tight and weak muscles. So this is pretty common in the calves, especially for runners. So if you are running a lot and you find that your calves are getting tight and you stretch them and you roll them and you use Theragun and you try everything you can to get them loosened up, but they continue to stay tight, it may be just because they're not strong enough to take the load that you're demanding. So every time we land, the calves need to do the work. So they need to do the work because they lift the heel up, and they need to do the work to help with the forces that are when you're landing down, whether you're on the ball of your foot or more midfoot. It's a little bit different if you're heel striking. But let's just say, for example, you're landing on the ball of your foot. And so regardless of how you're striking the ground, your calves are always going to have to do some work. And if they are not strong and conditioned to do that work, then they will get tight and cranky. And if you think about when you're running or even when you're walking, especially if you're walking up hills a lot, there is a lot of times that you land down on the ground, that you put force through your body, that the calf needs to take the load. And so if they are not conditioned to do that, then they will probably get a little bit cranky at you and tighten up. And stretching is not going to be the solution for that. So that's 3 examples: when your muscles are tight and short, when they are tight and weak, or when they are compensating. And that's just kind of an overview of some times when stretching might not be the solution. So my intention for this video is to give you that information and to help you explore in your own body when those examples might be true. And then to say to yourself or ask yourself, okay, have I been doing these same stretches for a really long time and they're not giving me long-lasting relief or success or progress? And then that might be the indicator that, yep, there's something else going on and there's a bigger root cause or a bigger underlying issue that's important for you to get addressed. Send me a message, leave a comment if you have further questions. And until next time, thanks so much and see you again.